All right, welcome to this week's film study for 11warriors.com. I'm Kyle Jones. I want to talk to you this week about the Nebraska victory for Ohio State, 21-17 last Saturday in Ohio Stadium. A much closer game than I think many anticipated. Certainly the spread at 25.5 certainly seemed to be a little bit off. Many folks prognosticating it, expected another blowout for Ohio State. Certainly didn't come out that way. And the big story, of course, has been the offensive line for Ohio State. Not the performance many expected. Even though Ohio State started the game 8.8 yards a play in the first half, actually finished the game at 6.1 yards per play, which is pretty close to what they had averaged throughout the season. Against Akron, it was 6.3. Against Michigan State, 6.4. Iowa, 6.3. So not that far off from some other performances in which, we didn't worry too much about what was happening with the Buckeye offense. Luckily, the defense for Ohio State showed up to play, really held Nebraska in check. We're not going to talk about that much today. We're really going to focus on that offensive line because, again, the defense did their job. Most of the yardage that Nebraska was able to gain came through quarterback scrambles. Some pass interference penalties kept the ball moving for the Cornhuskers, and they really just sat on the ball. Ohio State only had 11 first downs. They only ran 45 plays, I believe, 46, something like that, which is the lowest of the season by far. Kind of just a weird, wonky game. But the things that I really thought were important to take away here is, despite the conversation around Zen Michalski starting at left tackle and the loss of Josh Simmons, the offensive line really struggled as a unit. And yet Ohio State still was able to, one, come away with the win, and two, they were able to still move the ball pretty well. Again, 6.1 yards a play. Certainly not the 30-point blowout many expected, but Nebraska's not going to turn the ball over 5 times every game the same way they did against Indiana the week prior. Now, I think everyone expected that to be the case. The Huskers showed up and certainly cleaned some things up against the Buckeyes in Ohio Stadium, gave the Buckeyes a good game. The Husker defensive front showed up to play. But Ohio State's offensive line certainly has to be better. That's what we're going to focus on today. Some good things, some bad. Luckily, it seemed to get better for Zen Michalski as the game went on, of course, until he went down with that tough injury in the fourth quarter. So, again, many questions will remain, but let's dig into it. All right, let's dig in here. A lot of the focus has been on Zen Michalski and his work at left tackle, and this plays evidence by it. It was showcased on the broadcast. This is in the first quarter. He's at left tackle. You can see he gets beat inside on a move, forces Howard to escape the pocket. Luckily, Howard's able to, pick up a few yards positively. But these type of plays, they plagued the Ohio State offense, especially in the first half. It was a problem for the passing game. They weren't able to get going. But what I want to show is what was happening here, because it's important to show the way that Nebraska attacked it. Now, you can see G. Scott comes across the formation. Once he's set, he could be a part of the protection, right? But what's happening is Ohio State's dividing the protection in half. And that's where you got 3 people on one side to the left with the back, and the tight ends to the right side, theoretically. Really, this is a 5-man protection, because what's going to happen is Judkins is going to take the fake handoff across. That's actually going to hold the linebacker. So Judkins isn't even in the fit, but it is still a half slide. And what that means is that what's going to happen at the line of scrimmage is you always hear the center's going to make the call. And right now it's Seth McLaughlin's call to say, which way do I need to slide and who am I sliding with? And because of this tackle being out here, this edge, this potential rusher, because of that look, he's going to say, I'm going to have a slide to the right. And that means these 3 guys to the right side, they're all just stepping to the right side and cutting off that gap. They only have to worry about a defender coming through one side. That's it. Meanwhile, on the back side, you have man locks, right? And so Donovan Jackson, he knows he's got that nose tackle, and that means he's going this way or that way. He's got both of those gaps, which is why McLaughlin's able to just step right, And then the biggest issue, though, is that leaves Zen and this speed rusher all the way out here. And there's a big gap already between them. You can see that. Now, as the play gets started, you can see, watch everybody on the right side step right. They all step right. Yep, they're cutting it off. Now, of course, G. Scott's taking off as the tight end. Judkins is taking the fake handoff. We've got our man-on-man there. And then, of course, we've got our man here. Now, one of the things that happens with Zen is he's so worried, as you could tell, that he's so worried about this guy coming around the edge, the speed rusher, that he gets a ton of depth wide like that. And that's going to end up hurting him in this situation, because he gets real deep and wide, and that leaves a huge space right here for that defender to go through. Now, it's well designed. This is intentional, I believe, from Nebraska, because this defensive tackle, he's not looping around. He's not doing anything. He's trying to come straight up field, because as he comes straight up field, that allows this end to either work straight down like this, which Zen's worried about, or jab and come inside. And that's what happens because he's got so much space. He's a speed rusher. Any tackle in the world is going to have trouble with this. Obviously, if they're new, if they're worried and they're so worried about getting beat by the speed rush, which Zen is in this situation, right? He gets so much width. He allows this entire space to open up. He's got a faster speed rusher who just uses that to his advantage. Jab step in. Luckily, Howard senses it because his eyes are right there for the read. He's able to escape the pocket, pick up positive yards. But this laid the groundwork for what happened throughout the rest of the day in the pass coverage. Now, as the day went along, Zen got much more comfortable in pass protection. He wasn't overreaching, as we just saw. And Nebraska, to counter that, they started doing a good job of actually attacking the protections. They were getting Ohio State into predictable protections and then attacking it. So again, we've got the 3 technique over to the right side, which means that McLaughlin's going to tell the right side to step right. That means that Donovan Jackson has the nose tackle one-on-one, who's lined up right in the A-gap, almost more over the center. Zen's got this end out here. And then actually what we see is the back, Judkins, he's got to take on this line or this linebacker if he blitzes. If not, then he can go leak out on a pass route. But he's got to scan before he ever leaves the backfield to pick that guy up. And what we see Nebraska doing, right? You can see the right side of the line steps right. You know, they're stepping outside in that zone. But we see this nose tackle is going to jam this side and then loop around. We're going to get a wide rush from the end, and then we're going to get the backer through the middle. Through the B gap. And what you see then is Judkins, he's got his eyes, so he's going to pick up this blitzer. But Donovan Jackson can't handle the straight bull rush from a very good, the big punch, right? Can't handle it from that very good defensive lineman. Nebraska had a very strong front. I think you're going to see some guys show up on all Big Ten teams. You know, this was not a great play for 74. You know, this was not just a Zen Michalski day. There are issues all over the O-line. Will Howard does a great job once again to escape pressure, and find receiver downfield. So, you know, the issues with the pass protection were not just on the left tackle. Everybody seemed to have issues. Nebraska did a good job of picking those apart and schematically going at what Ohio State was doing pass protection-wise. Now, in the second half, we actually saw Ohio State start to, change their pass protection up. They recognized that Nebraska was attacking what they were doing. And so you saw some different looks. You saw some 7-man max protect, you'll hear it, where you leave the line or the running back and the tight end actually to help chip before they release on a check down route, and you're really relying on those 3 wide receivers. Now, this was the scoring drive that Ohio State was down, had to have it. It was 14-17 at this point, and they start the drive off immediately with a nice wheel route and out and up to Carnell Tate, who is wide open, right? We can just take a quick look at the coverage. It's a cover, it's really just a cover 3 because we've got deep, and then this guy's sitting in his own, this guy's sitting in his own zone, right? Zone. So it's 3 deep, 4 under. Carnell hits the wide, hits the outside and cuts up, right? So it's wide open from a passing perspective. The coverage is beaten. Great call against a cover 3 look, but it's really about the protection. What I mean by that, we look in the backfield here. What you can see is that you're going to have G. Scott actually come and insert himself and basically help Zen Michalski by taking away the inside. Then you're going to have the running back is going to help chip on the outside. So you've got 7 guys, right? So now as they come through here, right, they're all able to step. They're basically playing what's called a full slide, meaning everybody's stepping out. Zen, meanwhile, he's going to have to protect this outside edge, but that's because he's got help in the middle, right? He knows that if I get somebody inside, I'm going to have help from the tight end. That's also going to cover in case this guy comes straight up field and beats Donovan Jackson. But you've just got 7 guys there. You're really able to double team those edges, right? Again, watch Judkins. He's going to chip the edge, right? Watch the way he just chips and then releases. He just gets enough of that edge just to help Fryer give enough time. Howard's got enough time in the backfield. So, I'm expecting that Ohio State, as they start to have issues trying to find the right offensive line, you're going to see more of these max protect looks. We're going to talk about the game-winning touchdown because this was another great example of Ohio State trying to help Zen out. And actually, Quinshon Judkins is actually starting on the play to help protect the left edge next to Zen, ends up catching the game-winning touchdown. What do I mean by that? Well, it's a crossing route. We've got deep verticals. G. Scott's going to come out here. We're going to have Jeremiah Smith running a deep over, Carnell Tate behind him on a follow concept. And then what we're going to see is Judkins just kind of help chip and then release out into the flat, right? We're going to see him. It ends up looking more like a corner route, but we're going to talk about why that is in a second. We can see here, there goes G. Scott. We get these guys coming in crossing routes. There's Thurman clearing out. They're really looking at Jeremiah Smith. Ball's out, touchdown wide open. But I want to talk really quickly about what's happening in pass protection here, because we're seeing what's called the full slide again, right? Where they're all stepping in one direction. Again, we've got this 3 technique, right? That's where they're setting it. And we got the back over here. So the back's going to cover this edge. He's got the outside edge regardless, which means we're going to have everybody stepping to what is our left, their right. There's no immediate threat. There's nobody right over Zen. These guys are kind of off in the distance. So instead of, he's not just going to step inside because, you want to make sure that this lane is covered. So instead what he's doing is he's just taking what we call a vertical set, right? He's just dropping straight back. And as you can see him gaining depth, right? Everybody else is stepping this way. He's going this way, right? We can see that immediately. That allows him to catch this defensive end with plenty of room, but he also knows he's got help to the outside. So he's, making sure he's opening himself out there. He's not going to get beat to the middle because, again, he knows he has help. He's got that running back there. The running back, meanwhile, he's looking. He realizes this guy isn't an immediate threat because he's really looking for blitzers. He's looking for anything off the edge. He's looking for this guy to come in a pressure. And as soon as he realizes Zen's good, okay, Zen's good to go, I'm looking for pressure. And then he sees 42 starting to break down. So what Judkins smartly realizes is this guy's not a blitzer. He's actually got me in man coverage. So now I've got to shake him. Now, typically what you'd see a back come and chip and then just release to the flat. But because of the concept and because it's near the goal line, he realizes, okay, this safety is coming inside. This corner's left. There is nobody to this side of the field, right? There's nobody in that corner when we look back at the sideline view. So what we get Quinshon smartly. He's going to shake and then break out to the corner here, right? He's got pass protection responsibilities, breaks out to the corner. He's wide open one-on-one against the linebacker. But again, if you watch in slow motion, he's watching in pass protection. He's making sure there's no threats. He's making sure Zen's not beat. This is well set up to protect Will Howard. Quinshon's not the first read at all. You can see 1, 2, Will's waiting there working, trying to see if he can get one of the crossing routes. And then when he doesn't, only then, because Quinshon broke this guy's ankles, is he able to just loft it right to his running back in the corner. So they cleaned things up in pass protection. There were other issues throughout the day on the O-line, but to put it all at the feet of just the left tackle is unfair. Now, as I mentioned, these problems on the offensive line were not just with the left tackle. They extended across the entire line in both the pass and the running game. Now, on the very first drive of the game, Ohio State's moving the ball. They get to a close 4th and 1 in Nebraska territory. It's a handoff right up the middle to Travion Henderson. He gets stuffed, right? And he actually runs right behind 65, so everyone assumes 65, that's his issue. But the other missing partner, people are talking about Josh Simmons and his absence at left tackle. Will Kasmerick as a blocking tight end has been a huge part of this offense. He also got hurt in Oregon, missed this game. It's unclear when he's coming back, although Ryan Day has implied that he will be back at some point this season. Obviously wasn't there on Saturday, probably won't be back this coming week in Happy Valley. But this is a simple inside zone version of duo, right? Now, duo, we're not going to get into that if you've ever been in that discourse, but essentially what's happening on this play, and you can see it with the way everybody steps, right? The first step, look at the way everybody's moving, stepping, just cutting off this gap. Everybody's just pushing this way. Everybody's pushing to that right except who? And that would be Bennett Christian, the guy who's in the game at tight end instead of Will Kasmerick. Because instead of climbing to this linebacker, he cuts off this defensive end. Now, I understand he's worried about giving up that penetration. The problem is this is a lack of reps and lack of chemistry because now he is double teaming that defensive end with G. Scott. That's a double team instead of climbing up here and cutting off that linebacker. And wouldn't you know it, that's exactly who is there to get hands. Because of this, he cuts off this lane. Henderson's got a pivot at the last minute. And now G. Scott isn't able to hold his block because Bennett Christian was taking it. So now when it comes time, we've got a face mask here. We've got penetration, all coming from that tight end spot. And that's just what happens when you have backups in the game who have not seen these types of reps before. It's critical to build this chemistry, but again, not just on the left tackle, although certainly you'd wish that there's some chemistry. You'd assume that Simmons and Kaczmarek would have had that figured out, probably would have gotten a first down otherwise, potentially would have scored and had a very different start to this game. All right, so another issue with the Ohio State run game is that, as anyone who's been watching the videos or is familiar with Chip Kelly knows, that the run game is very much an RPO game, right? There's pass plays attached called relief, so whether that's a screen, a quick hitch, what have you. And again, that's just to help take pressure off of the offensive line and keep the defense on its heels, right? And so what we see in this play is it looks like it's just, a stuffed handoff that doesn't go anywhere. Quinshon Judkins doesn't get much room here. But what's actually happening on the play is it's two plays in one. It's, again, split in half. So on the left side, we've got a pass concept. You can see Abuka's going to leak out to the left side. He's running like a slant flat with Carnell Tate over on that side. And Will Howard is reading this defender, number 5 right here. Because if this defender follows the run handoff, then there's one less defender there. He should be able to throw the ball pretty easily. They'll have numbers to the pass side. What ends up happening is that guy sees it. He sits, right? He actually ends up moving out there in zone coverage, right? He sees pass because he sees, for whatever reason, he's just staying home, and he's going to let his buddies on the other side take care of the run. And Ohio State actually is pretty well set up for this. Even though Michalski and Donovan Jackson are going to be in pass protection, this is an outside zone to this side, so everybody's stepping right, cutting off. You got the tight end. You're actually going to see Jeremiah Smith come up here to this safety. They've got numbers in the blocking game. This should be a first down. And yet what ends up, or at least a big gain, and then what ends up happening is as everybody goes through, McLaughlin cuts off the nose. We see G. Scott come out to the corner while Smith comes up here. The problem is that Tegra Shabola just locks onto this end with Josh Fryer. Now, Fryer is engaged here, and nobody picks up that linebacker. Now, there's 2-on-1. These guys have to combo together and figure out, as soon as one guy is there, who's going to release. This should be Tegra Shabola. Why? Because he's inside. And so unless he starts to leak over the top and Fryer sees that and can come out, Tegra should be thinking immediately, I got to keep an eye on this guy in case he comes behind me. And unfortunately, it was just the wrong ID. He didn't see him properly. He never looked up. He was just engaged on that end. 42 comes through. McLaughlin eventually ends up, he sees him and tries to pick them both, tries to take 2 for 1, and the tackle makes the play. This is just unacceptable for this point in the season for Ohio State to be having, guys that have been playing games. It's one thing for Zen or Christian Bennett, who this is their first real playing time. Certainly for Zen at least. These are guys that have started multiple games and are still having these types of hiccups. Ohio State cannot have this. Now, this is not going to be fun. It pains me to put this type of stuff out there, only because it's going to be embarrassing for the players. These are still college kids. But this play in particular is just emblematic of what happened on Saturday and what was going on up front. Now, it ends up being Quinshon Judkins gets a couple yards, and this is just a counter play where it's actually a super counter. Where we've got a pulling guard here in Donovan Jackson. We've got one tight end who's going to pull, and actually a second tight end. We're going to have 3 lead blockers who are going to lead Quinshon this way, and we should get down blocks, right? That's what should happen. And actually at the snap, you can see that starting to happen, right? We get the puller, counter step. That's great. Except there's one guy who's pulling the wrong way who should not be, and that's 77. I don't know what he's doing here. It's obvious that he thought it was a counter play going the opposite way, got the call mixed up or something. He starts pulling, actually runs right into G. Scott, cuts off a pulling blocker, and instead of blocking down here on the tackle, McLaughlin actually Donovan Jackson does a good job of picking up for him. And, Quinshon Judkins does what he can, makes chicken salad, if you will, right? Luckily he's got 3 lead blockers leading him around. But 77, what are you doing here, man? And again, this is a guy who started 6 games, I believe, now for Ohio State. These are the types of things you expect in game 1. If this is what you'd expect against Akron, it takes a little while to build that chemistry. To have this happening in week 9, it's not good enough, man. It's a problem. Now, all those mistakes aside, credit where credit's due. I know people hate when I do this, but Nebraska came in with a good plan. They've got a very good front 6. Their defensive line, their defensive tackle specifically, they came to play. And they had a great game plan. Now, it's a unique defense. As you probably heard on the broadcast, it's like a 3-3-5 that they can do a lot of different things. They play like a 3 safety look like we see from Ohio State sometimes. But this is an example of what was happening a lot, right? You just see the handoff and the give and no gain, right? Now, what I want to show is that this is actually Nebraska is setting up for this, where this is a triple option for Will, where what he's going to do is he's got that option to hand off up the middle. He can keep for himself, or he's going to have a little screen. And actually, it's built into both sides on purpose. Now, what we can see here is that we've got these 2 dual screens to each side. And when we get up to the line of scrimmage, what's going to happen is that Will's actually going to make a call. Now, you can watch on his right cheek. He's actually tapping just for Travion right before the play starts, saying, hey, look, I can see the alignment. I can see how they're getting set. This is going to run to the right side. Now he's going to make a call so the line knows it. And what they're going to end up doing is they're going to say, great, because of the location of this tackle, this nose tackle's inside, we're just going to read this guy. And then everybody else on the line is going to step down, block. It's just an inside zone, right? And of course, then he's got the option. I can hand it off here, or I can keep myself. Now, he's already signaled because of the way the defense is set up. Now, unfortunately, his read gets screwed up. Because why? Not only is this guy crashing down to take the dive, normally that's a signal that I should give the ball, or I should keep the ball if I'm the quarterback. The problem is this safety is coming over the top to take the quarterback. And when you know as a quarterback you might get hit, you always give. And unfortunately, that meant I'm giving right into a pile. So what does this mean? It means Nebraska is designing, and they know, one, which side Ohio State's going to run to, and they're gambling by bringing this safety all the way down. It's just a cover 1. They're going to have that other safety the other side play their free safety in the middle of the field, and they're gambling that we're going to bring this extra body from the secondary, who's not accounted for in the blocking scheme. He's going to be the extra body to have the quarterback and take away the option, right? So we can see it one more time, right? You can see number 2 lurking in the back. He's going to kind of hang, and then he looks around, or he loops around there. He's got the quarterback, right? He just moves right at the snap. He's lined up behind the middle linebacker, loops right around, and unfortunately throws off Will's read. There's 2 defenders here, one to take the running back, one to take the quarterback. No matter what Ohio State does in the blocking game, they're screwed. And that's because Nebraska had a great call. They were able to predict, and we see this, unfortunately, this is one of the tendencies that's coming from Ohio State, which is they're going to run to the field. Or I'm sorry, they're going to run a bubble screen to the field. They've got our relief, like we said here. We're going to run option this way. And so all Nebraska said is, great, we're going to send our extra body. There's 11 players on the field. You can't put 5 and 5. You're going to have 5 and 6. So we're going to send that 6th defender to one side over to the wide side because we're pretty sure that's where Ohio State's going. You can see them otherwise loading up their defensive front to that opposite side just in case they do still run it into the boundary. So again, a great plan from Nebraska. Luckily, as we'll see in the next snap, Will was eventually able to learn from this at the most critical moment. So again, people can be frustrated that Nebraska was able to read on Ohio State's tendencies because, again, this look of rolling the safety down, it typically comes from when Ohio State was in this pistol look, right? And that was because they could run this dive play where Will could keep around the outside, and then they could have some type of screen, one of these guys helping each other out, just some type of relief. Maybe it was even just double slants or anything they could do from up top as a pass relief. Now, Nebraska sees it. Again, this is about to set up the scoring touchdown that would seal the game for Ohio State coming from behind in the 4th quarter. And now at this point, Ohio State's learned and they've said, okay, if we come up, we know what Nebraska's going to do. If we come out in this lineup with the pistol look, we've got a run look to the right side. We've got our tight end here in case we want to run zone, right? We've even got a receiver, and Nebraska, responds accordingly. They load up the line to that side. They load up their front, and you can see the safety kind of lurking back here. He's sitting here thinking, great, I'm going to come down just like everything else. We got man, so we know we're not going to throw it. We got a free safety in the middle field. Nebraska's feeling good because probably 3 or 4 times throughout this game when Ohio State's shown this look, they've shut it down by doing exactly this. Now, you can see him creeping up. He's going to come. You see Michalski's going to leave the edge unblocked here, who's going to clamp right down on the halfback dive. We can see it here. I'm coming. It's actually a split zone in this point. G. Scott's going to come across and kick this end out. And so now, because we see the split zone, this safety, all of a sudden, he's got the dive, right? And that's smart because now Will Howard, he sees that the safety's crashing hard on the dive. I'm going to keep and run for myself, right? Again, we get a split zone, blocking down. This guy's going to get knocked up by the tight end, which means suddenly this safety's got to play the dive. He's got to now suddenly play it, and every single time he believes that if I show this look, Will Howard's going to hand because he's already done it 3 or 4 times, and in the most critical moment, Will doesn't hand it. He keeps it. There's plenty of room, picks up a huge first down. The very next play, Ohio State would score. So a lot of frustration about the offense, a lot of poor execution throughout the day. Obviously could have been a lot better on the offensive line, not just with the left tackle. Again, thought Zen got better as the game went on. It's unfortunate he ended up getting hurt on the last possession. Who knows how long we're going to be missing him at Ohio State. But it's unfortunate that the offensive line play wasn't up to snuff throughout the game because eventually the game plan was able to get there. They had some troubles early on, but when they had to have it, again, down 17-14, that last drive, they absolutely carved Nebraska up. They're able to make the adjustments against a good defensive front. A lot of questions, though, will remain for this Ohio State offensive line moving forward.